Tonight, thank you. Tonight, we are absolutely delighted to have Lidia Zylowska MD, psychiatrist, speak about ADHD and mindfulness. Lidia is an associate professor at the University of Minnesota Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences and a faculty member of the University of Minnesota Earl Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. She is an internationally recognized expert on ADHD and mindfulness-based therapies. Her research work pioneered the application of mindfulness in ADHD. She developed mindful awareness practices for ADHD programs and helped co-found the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center. She is also the author of 2 books, as well as lots of articles, but one of the books is The Mindfulness Prescription for Adult ADHD, and the other is Mindfulness for Adult ADHD, a Clinician's Guide. So without further ado, Lidia, we're delighted to have you here. Welcome. And you can now post your slides or introduce yourself or however you want to run it. It's in your hand.
Well, thank you so much, Ellen, for the introduction and also for the invitation to present to your group. I'm delighted to be here and hope to have a nice dialogue at the end as well. And I will go ahead and share my slides, and you can tell me if you can see them. Here we go. Can you see the slides?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So let's see if I can forward. Having trouble advancing them. Oh, I guess I have to click. So this is what I want to cover today, and really hope that I can empower you to bring mindfulness to your life in a way that it works for you. So I'll talk a little bit about what is mindfulness and, rationale, why we would want to use it for ADHD. Why would you want to use it for ADHD? I'll talk about steps in applying mindfulness to your life, and hope through that kind of help you connect with creativity, your own creativity, to say, I know the principles, I know the framework of what is mindfulness. So now I can actually start figuring out what makes sense to me, how to use it, how to bring it. Sometimes mindfulness is kind of a scary word for people, especially with ADHD, when it's attached to meditation and you feel like meditation is something I've tried before, it's hard for me to do it, therefore it's just too hard. So my hope is that through our discussion today, you'll find that there's many different ways to practice mindfulness, and you can actually tailor them to your own life. I will touch on what the MAPS for ADHD program is. This is the Mindfulness Practices program that we developed at UCLA that started my journey with mindfulness in the context of ADHD. So I just want to highlight a little bit about it, especially if you're a clinician or if you're a coach, that might be of interest to you. And then we'll talk about different mindfulness resources that I often recommend to people. It's just a sampling of different tools that are out there, but those are specific for ADHD. Okay, so what is mindfulness? So I thought maybe people can just put little, like 1 or 2 words in the chat to say what comes to mind when you hear the word mindfulness. What comes to mind for you? And some of you may be very experienced with mindfulness. Some of you may very little, or maybe just have a notion of what it is, but not a lot of experience. So I'm hoping that, that people can just share of what comes to their mind. So I'll read some of them. Being in the moment. Great. Ways to redirect the mind from all this stress and chatter. Great. Very much the utility of mindfulness. Breathing. Being present without judgment. Another one is being aware of surroundings and what is going and tailoring your behavior to the situation, being present in the moment, being reflective, redirection, and paying close attention to surroundings. These are awesome. And I have to tell you, you touch on everything that I think mindfulness is. So I know many of you already know what mindfulness is, and I will be repeating some of these themes that came in the chat. But it's nice to know that so many of you kind of already can highlight different aspects to mindfulness, because mindfulness is actually not just one thing. There are different facets to it. Okay, so let's see if I can. Here we go. Many of you might have seen this picture. It's a common picture that we bring up when thinking about mindfulness, and trying to think of what it is by also highlighting what it's not. So you could contrast mindfulness with mindlessness, but that's kind of has a negative connotation. So it's more helpful to think of automatic pilot as the opposite of mindfulness. And automatic pilot is not necessarily bad. It is just a quality that we have. It's function of learning, that once we've done things many times, once we have a habit, we often do it without necessarily being present to what we're doing. And it's a way of preserve cognitive resources. But what often happens is that we also develop these habits of, ruminating on the past, maybe thinking about the future. There's or we're doing planning, and those can take over and kind of keep us always somewhere else than where we're at. So not present, always in our minds. And that can be helpful. That can help with planning. That can help with reflection. But it also can make you miss out on what's in front of you and make you inflexible and maybe miss out things that are in the present, in the now. Also, and this is very true of ADHD, if we tend to be in this automatic pilot mode when we're in our minds, when we're thinking, when there's a busy mind, when there's mind wandering, distraction, being distracted, ruminating on things. And oftentimes suffering comes from that place. There can be negative thoughts, negative feelings. There may be a story that we have about ourselves or what's going on that actually can be creating more, more difficulty in how we approach the situation. So there's a great value in being able to recognize when you're in that place of either not being quite present or stuck in thinking, ruminating, and being able to shift out of that. So mindfulness is actually a way of recognizing when you're not mindful and also reshifting more to the present. There's lots of ways people think of mindfulness. And as I mentioned before, mindfulness comes from meditation traditions, particularly Eastern traditions of Buddhism. And here's one definition I really like to bring up when I think of mindfulness. It's is the top one that says, it's moment by moment awareness, what happens to us and in us. So it's awareness that's noticing what's outside of us. And with ADHD, also noticing what's in us, which that's not always easy, because there's such a tendency to be distracted by either your mind or by what's happening outside, not as much bringing attention inward. The other definition is by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. Many of you might know, he's actually from the East Coast, and a lot of work with MBSR, or mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And this is a common way of talking about mindfulness in our culture. So it's paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And many of you mentioned those qualities of being non-judgmental or being in a present moment. But when you just notice a typo, so on top of the slide, so disregard that. But when you think about what really those definitions are doing, they're really pointing out to the fact that there's something about attention that has to happen when you're doing mindfulness. And there's something with your attitude that happens. So there's these two steps to practicing mindfulness or mindful awareness. Shifting your attention, or first noticing or paying attention to where your attention is and where you want it to move to. And also noticing your attitude and perhaps shifting that if your attitude is more closed off or critical, to bringing more non-judgmental, open, and curious attitude online. And what happens when you do it, and some of you alluded to that as well, is that you're creating a little bit more ability to reflect, to step back, to have more space, be less reactive, and ultimately have more choices to respond. And that's a definition of being able to self-regulate, to have more awareness, more insight, and more self-regulation ability. So if you really think of mindfulness as attention and self-regulation training, it becomes pretty clear that that's a good approach for ADHD. It doesn't mean it's an easy approach. It's a way to try to engage where there's difficulty and strengthen that difficulty by doing attention self-regulation training, trying to bring up the areas that are weak in ADHD to have a little bit more ability, to have more skill. And this is just a quick slide to show that mindfulness often engages the areas of the brain that are involved in self-regulation, but also that are also implicated in ADHD. Okay, so let's talk about the practice of it. Let's talk about mindfulness training. And if the word training feels like a big ask or something to take on, just think about, bringing mindfulness moments to your life as a way to start. There are many different ways to practice. Probably know this. There's the formal practice of meditation, mostly sitting, but also, which is very, user-friendly with ADHD. You can do walking mindfulness. There's also other mind-body trainings like yoga, tai chi, that can bring this mindful attending, that moment by moment attending to the present moment, to your body. So for those that find sitting meditation difficult, these other approaches could be helpful. And maybe you're already doing some of these, maybe yoga, for example. And there are ways of doing yoga very quickly, and there are ways to do yoga more slowly and with more emphasis on the breath. So you can certainly see that as a mindfulness training. The informal practice is really shifting attention and shifting attitude, even for seconds, or brief moments, anywhere, anytime. Another way of thinking of it is, we live up here in our thoughts so much, so trying to drop our attention from that cloud above to this plane of the present moment. And we'll talk about, there are many things in the present moment you could anchor your attention to. But the things that are very commonly used in practice is your breath, your body, or five senses, things around you, like hearing, smelling, tasting. Mindful eating is example of connecting with five senses by shifting attention from, again, that automatic pilot mode or up here from thinking to being more present by noticing sight, smell, touch, things like that. One of my patients used to say, she loves mindfulness on the go. She did not like this idea of slowing and stopping and pausing. But really liked this idea of informal practice, because this was on the go. She could go about her day, but do these little checking ins and tuning into the present moment. And so whenever you tune in, whether it's in meditation practice or as you go about your day, when you tune into your breath, you are doing quite a bit in terms of your attention training, your awareness training, and attitude training. So here's just sort of moment by moment. In the practice, you're asked to focus on your breath. Most people, and this may happen faster when you have ADHD, you focus in just a little bit, then you lose your focus, your mind kind of takes over, you start thinking, maybe having a story in your mind, there's mind wandering going on. So, and you might not be even aware of it. And the moment you become aware that you've been distracted, that's a moment of mindfulness, an opportunity to redirect. So then you can refocus on the breath. And then so you focused again for a little bit, you lose your focus again, you aware of losing your focus, and then you can refocus. The more we can see this process in this, like in this way, in the non-judgmental way, with curiosity, with acceptance, the more we can actually learn from it and intervene. And this is, analogy to anything you do in life. When it comes to task management, you focus on the task, you get distracted, or maybe not just in your mind, you impulsively start doing something else. So, and then catching yourself doing it, being non-judgmental of it, which is, the opposite of beating yourself up, criticizing yourself in the moment. What's wrong with me, right? But noticing that you veered off in some way, and then knowing I have a moment now of a choice. I can refocus, and maybe I can learn how it is for me to refocus. Okay, so I wanted to just do a little bit of a practice, because we can talk about mindfulness, but practicing is always, a better learning and more fun. And breathing is such a key practice through many different traditions of meditations. One, because it's a good anchor for attention inward. We can learn a lot from our breathing. It's also a way we can shift our physiology by attending to the breath, by slowing the breath, by changing your breath. With mindfulness practice, we often start with just, notice your breathing as it is, kind of how it is in its natural state. And then as you notice the breath, often it by itself spontaneously slows down. Sometimes not. Sometimes people actually notice that they have more anxious breathing by noticing their breath. So it's more of just being curious what it is for me when I notice my breath. Am I able to stay on my breath, or do I veer off really quickly? What else do I notice? And with that practice, you can learn a lot. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. You can't fail at mindful breathing. You can just notice I'm not focusing, and when I catch myself, that's my moment of training that attention and awareness. That's one important anchor to the present moment. And people find breath boring, right? And difficult to engage with. So there's different strategies to make it a little bit more engaging. You might have seen this practice called 5-finger breathing. It's done actually in schools quite a bit, but I find it very helpful for anyone, adults as well, which is holding up your hand and tracing each finger. As you breathe in, you trace up the thumb. As you breathe out, you go down to the valley here, and then another breath up, in and out, in and out, and so on. So we'll do that practice together. And that's a way to, if you think about it, you're anchoring your attention, not just to the idea of breathing, but also you're helping yourself with the movement and the actual, touching your fingers to stay more present with what you're doing. Okay, so let's do it. I want you to just get comfortable in your seat. It always helps if you're kind of comfortable and already by just, tuning into your posture, being a little bit more present. And it's an invitation, so you can use the hand, or if you feel like, I'm pretty good at just paying attention to my breath, you can just focus on your breath. And some people find that, what helps them is to put hands over their belly and just use that sense of touch to connect with the breath. I'm going to do the hand just for those who want to try this. So let's take a breath in, going up on the finger, And breath out. Breath in. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. Okay. So that was maybe, no more than 30 seconds. Not even that. And I was choosing a pace, but you might have found this pace helpful or maybe too slow or, too fast. So just share in the chat how is that? Was it difficult? Did it seem too fast? Was it too distracting to have this, or did it actually help you? Okay, so don't be shy. Because we can, the nice thing about learning mindfulness together, that we can really learn from each other. So your comment and your experience is a gift to others. I see that Katie found it helpful. Okay, easy pace. Right. Katie commented, it seems simple enough for my 8-year-old and even 4-year-old to follow. Yes. So this is often done with children, and sometimes also even like drawing something on the paper with a breath can be used for children. So it is a good one to try with kids. But it sounds like, like Joni mentioned, for her that this was a little bit distracting, that the fingers were distracting her from her breathing. And so this is good to notice that there may be a difference between from person to person, what is helpful for them. Somebody appreciated, Ellen appreciated the sensation of the finger. Claire liked the tactile piece of that, and using the hand help with concentration. And you may find that it may vary from day to day. Some days when you actually, maybe revved up and it's hard to just, say, I'm going to sit down and pay attention to my breath. This really helps to have something to just get you out of like this, this energy up here. But other times it may feel like I don't need this. I can just sit down. It's maybe I feel like just focusing on my breath feels right to me today. So these are just different tools, and part of deciding what tool is for that moment is part of mindfulness and checking in with yourself. Okay. Okay, and Laura said, I can see using this when it's hard to focus on the breath, and she will do it slower. Shouldn't be too many breaths in respect to carbon dioxide. Yes. So thank you for sharing this. If breathing becomes a practice you kind of get familiar with, it becomes a resource to just notice breath in different situations. So you can start noticing, how is my breath when I'm going to work? How is my breath when I'm at work? How am I when I'm at home with my family? Or how is my breath when I'm in interaction with particular people? Some people could slow your breath down. Some people you may find that your breath is up higher and more in your chest, which is more of an anxiety breathing. So the mindful practice at times, if you get familiar with just being curious about your breath and coming back to it many times, more naturally you start noticing also how your breath shifts in different situations. So breath is just one place where you can connect to with present moment. The other 3 anchors I like to talk about is body in general. So it could be any other body sensations. Sometimes for people, breath is a little problematic, especially the history of anxiety disorders. Focusing on the breath can increase anxiety, can kind of make the breathing more shallow. And if you notice that about yourself, finding another more neutral place to focus on is helpful. And that could be, noticing the palms of your hands, maybe noticing the area over your heart. Even sometimes it helps to put your hand over your heart, which is really a gesture of kindness and compassion to yourself. But for some, that may be helpful to do that. And you also feeling your body and sometimes your breath and your heart through that. Putting for some, and that's often used if there's a lot of agitation and kind of a lot of strong emotions going on. It's been used with children who may have developmental disabilities and behavioral outbursts. Paying attention to the bottom of your feet, which is what mindful walking is about. It's called the soles of the feet meditation, but it's helpful also for people who may find, it's hard for me to focus on my breath. So I want to maybe go for a walk and just notice how my feet are hitting the ground. That's another place in the body that you could choose to do it. And sometimes it's just the body moving. So as you walk, noticing the swing of your arms. It could be the anchor to the present moment. Or it could be, and this is extending this idea that I'm not just breathing through my chest and my body, it's my whole body breathing. So it's you're engaging a little bit of imagination in that way, of your whole body breathing. And for people who are visual learners, it's helpful to bring that on. Sometimes as you breathe in, imagine a color or light or some sort of metaphor of energy coming in, and as you're exhaling, having that metaphor of or picture in your mind of, releasing what needs to be released. Sometimes having that visual imagery can help anchor as well. I mentioned 5 senses. Sound is always there. Sometimes you might not be so easy to notice taste or smells of things, but the sound is often there, even if it's an absence of sound, like noticing silence or moments of more intense sound or less sound, whether it's traffic outside. If you're in New York or close to New York, you have lots of that. Could be sound, sounds inside the room. So for some people, that is a good place to almost like reshift from, again, busy thinking. You're noticing a lot of stress in your mind. Instead of breath, you can go to sound. And that may be a little easier at first before you move inward. For some, it could be actually tactile sensation. So for some people, especially if they have a pet, I always say, you can just pet your cat. Some people do it, instinctively, and it's very soothing to have a pet. But you can do that as a mindfulness practice. You can really notice how your cat or your dog, or is feeling against your hand. If and maybe just noticing, little things about them that typically you wouldn't, and how you're feeling as you're interacting with them. Okay. So here I just want to, I'm already touching on this, but I mentioned that, a lot of suffering can happen when we're in our thoughts. Here's some, thoughts that can go from worried to overwhelming to really being self-critical and hard and harsh with yourself, and thoughts that are really common with depression and thoughts of giving up. And certainly those are thoughts that can come when you have ADHD, and can be when things are very overwhelming, stressful, when you feel really down on yourself. And we know that there are moments like that for many people with ADHD. So, what happens with that? There's sort of a stepwise process of how you can use mindfulness. And I want to go through those steps to give you some ideas, again, of a framework of what resonates with, and you can choose what resonates with you. So typically when there's that worry or this dark cloud, and we're not even realizing we're in it, but our bodies and our minds are reacting to it. So you may feel overwhelmed, your body may be tense, you can have fatigue, And often cognitively, we're just kind of feeling stuck. We can all be overwhelmed by that place of worry, feel like we can't shake it off. You can also have this, behavior that follows from it. You get paralyzed, you can't get started, you're avoiding things. So often the first step in mindfulness is to name it. So that's what mindful labeling is. And that's what, oftentimes therapy is based on, that we learn how to recognize what's happening for us and give it a name. And many of you might have heard this: name it, you tame it. So mindful labeling is, noting what's going on. And mindfulness encourages us to be a witness and saying things with curiosity and non-judgment. So it's saying, and also saying it more as, I'm watching my experience, and I don't have to be identified with it. It doesn't have to define me. So it's helpful to even notice that as you label, you don't say, I am worried, but, oh, there's worry. Oh, I'm noticing there's overwhelm. So it's almost like, there's a little bit of a space already as you're naming it. You're not saying I am. In the practice of mindfulness, that's body scan, for example, which is noticing you kind of put attention on the top of your head, you go down to your face, you just kind of touching your whole body with attention sequentially. Oftentimes it's helpful to say, oh, there's elbow, oh, there's knee, versus my knee, my elbow, my foot. It's starting to have a little bit of that witnessing presence that can notice anything for yourself with a little bit of space. And that space can create possibilities. I'll talk about it in a moment. Oops. So once you notice, oh, there's worry, you can decide this cloud up here has a lot of power. I can't shake it off, but I can start practicing to try to weaken how much I'm stuck in it by moving attention away. Attention is the key. Attention is your secret weapon, that as much as things can pull it, we can pull it back, even if it feels sometimes like a tug of war. And so bringing it to the present moment is creating that some flexibility for yourself, some independence of being stuck in the worry. And we talked about breathing and 3 anchors, 5 senses could be the places that you move your attention to, even just for a little bit. And you can think of it as much as the worry will be pulling your attention, the more you're doing this sort of planned distraction and being in the present moment, that you're weakening this pull and this power of the worry. I mean, you're using worry here, but it could be any kind of negative thinking pattern or negative emotions. Could be anger, could be overwhelm, could be self-critical thoughts, feeling of depression. When the depression is still not so set, because you still have some ability to move away. Once people get really depressed, that ability goes away, and we know we need to treat it then more, either with medications or other means. But when we still have the ability to name it and step back, mindfulness can be very helpful. Sometimes it's taking a walk, and people know this too, also instinctively. Maybe if I go for a walk, I'll feel better. And that is true, because often when you walk, and especially if you're in nature, you automatically start paying attention to things outside of just being ruminating in your mind. The idea is that as you notice the pull of this cloud of negativity, doing something else to move away and weaken that pull is often a helpful first step. Okay, so focusing on the breath, focusing on the body in some way. And there's something else we've talked already about these different ways to make breathing work for you. But these other way here that I just want to mention is, if breathing is hard, we've done the practice with the fingers, but when there's a lot going on here and you can't focus on the breath, sometimes just even naming everything about the breathing, and these are some phrases from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a well-known mindfulness teacher, who now passed away, but a well-known Buddhist monk. So his way of anchoring attention to the present moment was almost narrating everything he was doing, like breathing and inserting some intentions for yourself. So here's an example. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I feel peace. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. It's a little rhyme to it. So some people can really find that helpful, or you can make your own. Like breathing in, I'm refreshed. Breathing out, I can let go. Again, some people might find it too distracting or too long, or like, wait, this is like working memory overload. I have to remember all these phrases. Sometimes it's just in and out, or peace, release, right? So you can shorten these by using a word. The other thing that you can do as this do something else to help that negativity is to use tools that you may encounter and other suggestions that are used for emotion regulation, whether it's from DBT. Some of you may know the TIP skills, which are the stress tolerance skills. A lot of it involves mindfulness, or even things like taking a warm shower, because the sensations of the shower can help you step away from the rumination or from the stress, stressful thinking. And here's some other examples: exercising, going for a walk, writing things down, music, imagery, prayer, talking with someone else, something else to try to it's like a planned distraction away from the overwhelm. So once there is a little bit of that going on, you can come back now with a little bit more space to the situation, or to the worry, or to the thinking pattern, and try to understand a little bit more what's going on for me. And this is when you can be more of like a detective a little bit, like, this was really making me worried. Why? What other thoughts? What other feelings? What other body sensations I'm noticing? Which may be hard when you really overwhelmed at first, or when the feeling is very intense. And that's often what a therapist will do for you, is to slow you down a little bit, tell you what else may be present, tell me what other thoughts you're noticing. Mindfulness helps us be that presence to ourselves, be that kind of own coach or therapist in a way. And you can work through a situation and say, I'm really anxious about this project. Why? Is it because I don't know where to start? Is it because I feel incompetent in some way? Or I'm worried I'm going to be judged? Is it because, I often know that when I do this, I will stumble and I'll trip, and then I'll feel embarrassed. And so I'm really dreading it, because there may be a feel of shame that will come up in that. And then, so once you recognize that, you can work with that. How can I respond to myself in those moments? And so part of mindfulness is recognizing more deeply what's going on for yourself, and then guiding yourself through it, self-coaching through it with compassion. And some of what happens with mindfulness is to say, stay with what's going on for you, be curious. And a lot of our suffering or difficulties come from not fully feeling the feelings underneath. It's in psychology, it's called experiential avoidance, or avoiding feelings. So guiding yourself to say, just don't judge yourself, see what's really going on for you. What are you noticing? Can open up avenues to knowing yourself and knowing how to be skillful in a situation, or what do I need to communicate? What is my body communicating to me, so then I can communicate to others? And so it's this balancing of learning about yourself, and then having a wise response of, maybe I am noticing avoidance, but is that the best thing right now? What can I do to do the opposite and not avoid? What would help me? And sometimes, that what you need is also understanding ADHD. So the mindful self-coaching has to be informed by ADHD. This inner voice has to be informed by ADHD. And being part of communities like this is very helpful, because you could, as you recognize what's going on for yourself, then you can also employ some skills that you may have, like, okay, I'm too overwhelmed, let me start with a to-do list, or let me call my coach, or let me call my friend, and we'll do this together, because the body, the double body system is really helpful. Maybe having some rules for yourself, because as you notice in yourself, you're just about to buy something again on internet, and maybe you should have, the 24-hour cool down period, or you put it on your, wish list on Amazon and come back tomorrow. So those are, so mindfulness and these common ADHD strategies can go hand in hand. What mindfulness can help with is that you just have more of that power to understand more deeply what's going on with you as you practice some of the typical executive function skills or strategies, as you take medications and you notice, how is medication affecting me? Or what are still my needs that are not being addressed? Because those things are not always easy to connect with for people. And what mindfulness can help is have that magnifying glass and that compassionate magnifying glass on yourself. Here's a practice I recommend to many people to start with. It's this practice called STOP. Many of you might have seen it. It's really an acronym, so each letter reminds you what to do. So S is stop, T will be take a breath or a few breaths, O, observe in the present moment, often observe around you, but very much observe what's inside, what's happening inside, and then proceed with a little more awareness and choice. Okay. So let's practice this. Let's try this, and I'll guide you through it. It will be a little practice, and hopefully we can share again how it was for you. Okay. So get comfortable again. Take a moment just to pause and notice your body sitting and what your posture may be. And let's just notice the breath for a few moments. Helps to take a couple deeper breaths. These often signal to the body to relax a bit. You may notice that there's the in-breath, and there's a little pause, and an out-breath, and then another pause again. So just being curious about that cycle of breathing for a moment. And now widen awareness a little bit and see what else you're noticing in this moment for yourself. Either in your body, is there any sensation in the body that you're noticing? Maybe just the, feeling your weight on the seat. Maybe there's an area that's a little uncomfortable, pain or tension. Checking into your jaw and shoulders. Those are places where we often hold our stress. Seeing if you can soften your face, your jaw, dropping shoulders and arms a bit. And noticing if there's any thoughts or feelings, or maybe even kind of energy that you're noticing in your mind or body. Noticing if there's restlessness or impatience, or maybe there is a sense of slowing down a bit. Maybe even noticing if there's a need. Is there anything you need to acknowledge for yourself or offer yourself in this moment? Something that's kind and supportive. Could be as simple as noticing I'm thirsty to, I really need to give myself some kindness for, it's been a long day and I'm still here and trying to learn. Maybe I'm a little tired, but offering that sense of, I see myself, I'm being kind to myself. And then proceeding with, we'll proceed with that, with this talk, and imagining you could do this in the middle of your day or in the middle of work or home, moving on with whatever you have to do. And we slowed it down a little bit. I was guiding you a little longer than you might do it yourself. It might be just a brief stop to say, okay, let me just pause, take a few breaths, check in a little bit with yourself, and then keep going. When I work with, I do a lot of work with residents, so, student doctors who are preparing to be psychiatrists. We often talk about, doing this between going on to the next meeting or moving from patient to patient. Just sort of, there's such a push to rush typically to jump in and, just doing a little stop as a way to checking in and tuning in with yourself. And that's true for all of us. We're often so on the go, and, there's so many things that are saying, keep going, you have to do this, you have to do that. This little practice can be a way to break that cycle of automatic pilot of go, go, go. So any comments or things you would want to share about what you noticed with this experience? So hopefully you can share. And some, I also want to encourage you, if you didn't like this practice or something was difficult about it or didn't resonate with you, please share that too, because you'll find that, not every practice, and maybe that will vary from time to time, even within the same person, they can connect with some mindfulness pause, and sometimes it's really difficult or feels uncomfortable in some way. Okay, somebody sing like Sora, like the rhyme. I think that's with the Thich Nhat Hanh before. And better than cutting sheep. Definitely when people start doing mindfulness, especially if there's some sleep deprivation, they may notice tiredness is the first thing, but also it's a great way to wind down before going to sleep. A lot of yawning arising. Some people find it so relaxation and tiredness or sleepiness are not too far from each other. So oftentimes when we talk about meditation, it can be used to help fall asleep, but if the intention is to kind of practice attention and alertness, it's best to do it in the morning, actually. See, Sam, appreciate it, reminded to be kind and supportive to yourself. This is really I think the one of the greatest values of whether it's mindfulness or self-compassion practices, positive psychology practices, is to bring these positive emotions to yourself of kindness and compassion, because it's very easy to can maybe get stuck in and this is, as you know, many people grow up with many criticism and negative comments directed at them. So it's easy to also start doing it with yourself as you grow up. So a lot of people can be very harsh and critical of themselves. So it's almost like unlearning and trying to shift to say, well, first step is catching yourself when you're harping on yourself, and trying to be more neutral. And then the next step of really learning how to be with yourself in a more mindful and flexible ways, to offer yourself kindness and compassion in those moments. Somebody like the so again, this proceeding, right? Yeah, so it's being, connecting with the present moment, but not getting lost in the present moment, because sometimes that happens with ADHD. So it's checking in, and also, I didn't point that out, but mindfulness, when you think about how it's translated from its original word, that comes from these Buddhist meditative traditions, it's attention, awareness, and remembering your intention, remembering what you meant to be doing. So the checking in is also checking in with your intention. And that's such a key with ADHD, to say, what am I doing right now? Does it match what I plan on doing? And other people noticed, like tuning in, but also noticing some restlessness, and then also, again, appreciating the kindness. Yes, the kind. If I were to say what's there's this observing and kind of noticing part of mindfulness, but if it's done it's too analytical, it's missing the point. It's really it's mindfulness is heartfulness. Mindfulness very much about bringing that kindness to yourself, and noticing how it is for you to even practice it, and in the process, if it's hard to do the mindfulness while you're offering yourself kindness to it, you're already kind of practicing one of the most important parts of the practice. So I am aware of time. I want to just leave you with this quote from William James, which I think is so, to me, it's a great reminder to be mindful, because our life depends on it, right? Our experience, and you could insert my life, is what I agree to attend to. So that's, with ADHD, that can be a challenge, because we can be moved, the attention can be stolen and grabbed and moved in different directions, and the busy mind can bring up a lot of stuff going on. And you might be missing out on what's happening with your relationship, within the relationship, with your loved ones, when you're doing things that are otherwise meaningful to you, but you may feel restless and distracted. So it is to say, as much as I can, again, with kindness to myself, bringing attention back, so I can be more of the driver behind my attention, not allowing the attention to always be, pulled by different things. I will skip. This is just a little. This is an overview of our mindful awareness practice program. You can certainly check it out more if you're a clinician or a coach. Ellen was holding up the book. That's the book that describes this program. But the idea is that you can bring attention to many different things in the present moment, starting with these 3 anchors. So you develop some ability and flexibility to your attention, moving deeper into the body, then working with thoughts, emotions, interactions. So there's a natural progression. Things may, be a little bit more difficult when we get into thoughts and emotions. But often the first practice is the stop practice, and connecting with your breath and body, You can incorporate sound as well. I love this picture. This is really a reminder to find your own way to practice mindfulness, whether it's sitting and like this formal practice. It could be with guided, some, lots of apps out there. I'll point some of them. Could be music. Some people find that music is the way to become relaxed first. And then maybe as they relax, they may not listen to music and do focus more on the breath, or they do it simultaneously with music. Could be petting your pet, right? Cats are great if you're a cat person, for really noticing that softness, the purring. They give you lots of sensory input. So, bringing mindfulness to everything that comes with ADHD. I mentioned noticing medication effects, how you are with others, how you are with yourself, even noticing how your lifestyle choices affect you. So you could bring mindfulness to say, how do I feel when I eat maybe healthier foods? And those are, that's another talk, knowing that foods and diet can really be important for ADHD. Or even, how do I feel if I eat lunch in front of my computer and multitasking versus when I focus just on eating. Here's some resources that I've prepared with also my co-author John Mitchell from Duke University. But there are other resources. ADDitudes Magazine, many of you know, has lots of resources around mindfulness. Mark Burton, who you've had on your, I think in your group, is a pediatrician, developmental pediatrician that talks a lot about mindfulness. There's a new workbook for adults by a psychiatrist in New York, Dr. Lewis, that focuses more on the attitude piece of mindfulness, of really cultivating some of these mindful attitudes of not just non-judgmental and curiosity, which are, I think, the kind of the key parts of practice, but things like patience and being non-reactive. So they're just different ways that I think will resonate with people when it comes to practicing mindfulness. I just started preparing some. Started doing a YouTube channel where people can just check out some of the mindfulness things for without having to buy a book, and they can check it out. This is an old CD I put together and kind of repurposed that has some introduction. So if it's some stuff that tells you why you would want to practice mindfulness, or some introductions to the different practices. So if you may want to check that out by going to YouTube channel and looking up mindful. Let me move this. Mindful RX ADHD. Other books, especially for those who are parents, want to bring mindfulness to their kids or teens. Some by Mark Burton, some by others. Those that like to work with children or have children, they want to bring the mindfulness. Susan Kaiser Greenland has some neat resources, including mindful games, how to make mindfulness playful for kids, and do different fun things that connect them with their breath, their bodies, their thoughts and emotions. And other resources, Mindful Magazine, if any of you subscribes, it's a nice way to at least remind you about mindfulness, because it will show up either in your email inbox, or actually it's a print magazine as well, with lots of articles and ideas and tips, and that might be one way to keep mindfulness in your life. And then there's different apps. I often recommend Headspace, because some of the mindfulness practices are very short. Often helpful to do mindfulness practice with others. So finding another person that's interested in it helps. ADA or ADHD Association for Adults has mindfulness group. So you could check that out. There are classes through UCLA Mindfulness Research Center. Insight Timer is an app that has this feature that says how many people are meditating in this very moment. So it's kind of fun to feel like you're not alone in what you're doing. And there's lots of other apps. I've mentioned here Inflow. A full disclosure, I'm kind of part of that company, but it's an app that is based on CBT for ADHD and also has some brief mindfulness practices. So that may be of interest to some of you. So with that, I'll finish. And I assume we still have some time for questions, right? Just 3 minutes? Okay, so let's just do a lot of questions quickly. If you have any questions.
You want people to put them in the chat or?
Our group is not huge. They can put them in the chat or maybe unmute themselves. So we could do either. I see somebody once was interested in the workbook by Dr. Lewis. It's just called Mindfulness for ADHD Workbook. Sora is asking, which book do you recommend for adults with ADHD? Definitely start with the patient book if you're an adult with ADHD, because it's written for someone who's not a clinician and not planning to run a group. It also has the CD there with practices. So that will be the first one to start with. So one book is really for adults, for people, their loved ones who also might be interested in brief mindfulness practice. And then the other one is more for clinicians who just, it's more professional book. Any other questions? Or maybe even sharing, what you found helpful in keeping mindfulness in your life. One thing that I remember when I first talked to Ellen and Andrea, sorry, I just had him mind block for a moment. Sorry. It was, how that mindfulness can feel like something I should be doing, just like exercise. Like I should be doing exercise. I don't have time though, or it feels like, I'm too busy. It feels overwhelming. So part of mindfulness is, I hope, by doing these examples, I can empower you to say, what is it that I'm doing already that could be my mindfulness practice? So can I bring mindfulness to my morning routine somehow? Whether it's when you're in the shower, be really aware of the sensory input, the warmth, of the shower, the water, how your body feels, or maybe your first sip of coffee or a few first bites of breakfast. Maybe it is that you're a gardener or love walking or being in nature, and those are already kind of natural inducers of mindfulness, but you can make it a little bit more enhanced by saying, this is going to be mindfulness practice. So I'm really going to pay attention to how it feels to be working in the dirt with plants, or I can notice my body and my breath during that practice. You can do that with cooking. People say, when you chop, you chop. So, really doing things as you're doing them, being really present to them. So what are some of the things you are already doing? Sometimes, playing with kids are they're mindfulness inducers, partly because they really want our attention in the moment. And so they really know when you're distracted. So especially the younger kids are very, I think very good mindfulness inducers, like toddlers, because they're very sensory and tactile themselves. I mentioned pets, it could be saying, I carve out 5 minutes in the morning or at night for some meditation practice. Or maybe I text my friend and I say, hey, I'm going to do this. Let's do it together. Because having an accountability partner helps for anyone, especially when you have ADHD. Anything else that anyone would add? Okay, see that Joni mentioned just shift the language shift of not using the word I am, or to saying there is stress, there is worry, there is anger, there's frustration, there's self-criticism. So we can practice mindfulness by even just saying that, I'm going to learn how to name for myself what's going on for me in this different way, like this witness that's non-judgmental, that's kind, and it doesn't have to define me. I have some space from it. There are other practices that are really good for that, like rain. I didn't go over it today, but you can check that out on the YouTube channel too, if you're curious. That's one to work with difficult emotions. So I'll stop with that and see if Ellen or
Yes.
Andrea or Joni want to add anything, and I'll stop sharing.
I want to thank you for a wonderful presentation. There's so much in there. It was so rich, with so many different pieces for people to really think about. And they don't have to think about everything or know everything. Just take start with a tiny piece, a baby step, and see how that goes. I'm going to self-promote for a moment. I'm also an expert in ADHD and mindfulness. So if there are any questions that come up, please feel free to write to me and at adhd.bergencounty@gmail.com. I'm happy to talk with people about it. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Yes, so you have your own expert, and it's really a dialogue. Mindfulness is a dialogue. It's a process. It's a journey. It's not one thing. It's really kind of being curious about it. The practice ultimately is being curious about yourself and understanding yourself.
And I'm going to read what Laura wrote, which is, thank you. Wonderful talk. Love the pace of your presentation. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, sometimes I'm too slow for people, but I sometimes I'm too fast, and so trying to find the pace that actually resonates with me today. Sometimes it's more about the place you're in as well, and what the energy of the group is.
Well, it's certainly, we're all grateful for it, and this is the kind of talk you want to listen to again and again. So thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, or if you check out some of the resources and have a comment or a question. And I always love hearing from people, and I learn a lot from the feedback people give or what they notice. So thank you again, and enjoy your evening.